Vaporware, by definition, is any type of hardware or software that has yet to be released or made available for purchase. In terms of gaming, it's a product that either never comes out or is stuck in development hell either for years or forever. It's stuff like Half-Life 2 Episode 3 or Duke Nukem Forever. Today, we'll look at some games that fell off the face of the earth that could now be considered vaporware or are well on their way to disappearing entirely. The first game we should talk about is actually a more recent announcement than some on our list, DokeV. In development by Black Desert Online's Pearl Abyss, DokeV is essentially a way cuter, brighter, and definitely bigger budget version of Palworld without the questionable working environments some of you force your pals into. The developers unveiled the game back in 2019 as an MMO Mon-like that has you collecting monsters and working with other players to defeat enemies and bosses. Since then, the title has ditched the MMO aspect and is now regarded as an open-world action-adventure title with multiplayer co-op. It features multiple ways to traverse the world, numerous monsters to collect, and a ton of customization for your child character guy to wear. The trailers show way more, but we still don't know how combat works, how you're supposed to catch monsters, or even what the gameplay loop would actually look like. What we do know is that the last time we heard anything official about DokeV was for a music video featuring the game's characters singing the song heard in the first gameplay trailer. We weren't given any new looks at gameplay, just a look at all the types of cosmetics you could own. But a little research uncovered that DokeV won't be released anytime soon. A recent investor call with Pearl Abyss revealed that the Korean developer plans to ship the game sometime in or after 2026, which means it'll be at least 5 years or even more before we get to play it. The delay stems from no one actively developing the title, as Pearl Abyss has everyone that was working on it pulled onto working on Crimson Desert, which is another game that we've been waiting some time for. Announced the same year as DokeV, Crimson Desert is what you'd get if Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, The Witcher 3, and Red Dead Redemption 2 all had a baby together, somehow. The trailers we've seen since this announcement in 2019 show a vast open world, over-the-top melee combat, and way too much even to think that a game like it will actually exist. Despite being one of the biggest games shown at Gamescom last year, we're still ways out before any of us are playing Crimson Desert. That same investor call revealed that the game would be released in spring 2024, meaning we could have been playing it in the next month or so. Instead, Pearl Abyss delayed the game until spring 2025. And seeing as the game was close to release this year, the delay may have been to ensure Crimson Desert was completely polished, and it might have needed more time to flesh out the dozens of mechanics the team has crammed into it. Or it could be to scale back some of the ambitiousness we saw in the trailers, but no one knows exactly why at this point. The heads at Pearl Abyss seem confident that Crimson Desert will be a smash hit despite the long development cycle. They even went so far as to say there are no other games at the current G-Star conference in Korea that even compared to the game. And while they're confident the game will sell well, they seem unaware that people's interest will likely wane if no new information about it is shown to the public. The investors even addressed this during the call, saying, "Crimson Desert is a game that takes 7 years from the start of development to the expected release, which exceeds the development period of a normal game." That quote reveals that Crimson Desert has been developing since 2018 at least, putting the total development cycle time at 8 years by the time it's projected to be released. That's twice as long as it took for Pearl Abyss to release Black Desert in 2014, and that game was an MMO. Regardless of the total dev time either game needs, DokeV and Crimson Desert seem like uber-ambitious projects that we hope meet their expectations, even if it seems a little too good to be true right now. Next up is a type of medieval Monster Hunter-like game with you going against dragons and some giant humanoid-like creatures that put Attack on Titan to shame. Maybe. We only looked at their silhouette in the one trailer for this project. As far as we know, the untitled game from Psy Games is still being developed. At least that's what their website says. The last time we heard anything new about Project Awakening, the developer was hard at work making the proprietary Callista engine, which the game would run on, but that was back in 2021. It has been radio silence ever since then. However, Psy Games released several titles in that time, albeit using an anime aesthetic rather than the realistic style that we saw in the 2018 announcement trailer. Both Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, released in 2020, and Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, released on January 31st, were developed by Psy Games. While Versus used Unreal Engine 4, Relink was made with the in-house Callista engine that Project Awakening is supposed to use. Relink uses a nice mix of photorealistic textures and stylized graphics, and has some grand-scale boss battles that show what the engine is capable of. If the development of Project Awakening still occurred during the development of Callista, we might see the game resurface sometime this year. If not, vaporware. This next game may have been announced for the PS5 during the showcase in 2020, but people have been waiting close to a decade for it on Kickstarter. I'm of course talking about Little Devil Inside. This weird little indie game has you hunting monsters, but with a more stylistic approach to character and creature designs. It was one of the most talked about games coming out of the PS5 showcase, and we've heard nearly nothing about it since its State of Play gameplay trailer in October 2021. But if you've been part of the Kickstarter that launched back in 2015, this is nothing new. The developers, NeoStream Interactive, haven't made an update to the project's Kickstarter since 2020, which was shortly after the reveal it would be coming to PS5. Looking back at how frequent the updates were, no one was hearing much about Little Devil Inside Me for sometimes months on end before the PS5 showcase. With no updates since 2021, the game website being outdated by at least 7 years, and the 2023 launch window officially closed, this game might actually be on its way to becoming vaporware. It's a shame this might never come out, especially since it was one of the more unique titles many of us were waiting to play. And the only other game not released since the PS5 showcase is Pragmata by Capcom. We have even less information about this considering we only have 2 trailers and no real info from Capcom about what to expect. Based on the trailers, Pragmata seems like it'll be an action-adventure sci-fi game set on or around the moon. We know there will be boss battles, unique combat with the little cyborg girl on the astronaut character's back, and realistic visuals to accompany everything. But no one really knows when the game is supposed to be released now that Pragmata has been delayed indefinitely. Capcom has been pumping out a lot in recent years, with mostly successful launches. Since Pragmata's announcement, the company has released Monster Hunter Rise and its Sunbreak DLC, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Street Fighter 6, Exoprimal, and Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney trilogy. Still in the pipeline is Monster Hunter Wilds, which will build off the success of Monster Hunter World and Iceborne, and Dragon's Dogma 2, which releases March 22nd, and Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, which doesn't have a release date yet. We don't know what other games Capcom has yet to reveal or how far their projects are, but I don't expect it'll be too much longer before we hear about Pragmata again. Moving from Japan to Europe, there are 2 games led by Ubisoft veteran Mikhail Ansel that we're more than likely never seeing again. The first is Beyond Good and Evil 2, the very definition of vaporware at this point. First announced when E3 was very much still alive, Beyond Good and Evil 2 has been in development since 2008, and it wouldn't be until 2017 that we finally saw a trailer for the game, and we'd have to wait another year before we had our first look at gameplay for the massive sequel. 2018 would be the last time we heard about BG2 before learning that Ansel, who directed the first Beyond Good and Evil, would retire from game development in 2020. The series' 20th anniversary is this year, and rumors suggest that we'll get a remaster of the original game at least. Where the sequel is, though, is anyone's guess. Ansel's other game, Wild, was to be developed by Wild Sheep Studio, with him as the lead, and has had no new info since its announcement in 2014. The game might still be in development, as the most recent update in 2020 came as Ansel was stepping away. He said that the team would continue on the project despite his departure, but it's been over 3 years since then, and there hasn't been a peep. The studio, which has yet to release any game to date, appears to be around still based on employees keeping it on their LinkedIn profiles, but you can't go on the website anymore, and we couldn't find anything about a new project in the works. I wouldn't expect to hear anything at this point, but who knows? It took 8 years before Doom's remake finally released. If there's one game that no one's sure what's happening with, it's Metroid Prime 4. Announced in 2017, the sequel to the original Prime trilogy, Metroid Prime 4, was set to be developed for the Switch by a new team under longtime series producer Kensuke Tanabe. But after internal reviews said that the game was not at the level of quality needed, Nintendo completely rebooted development from scratch with the original developers of the series, Retro Studios, back at the helm under Tanabe. Since announcing the development restart, there has been little to no news about Metroid Prime 4, but that hasn't stopped the rumor mill from spinning. The current rumor is that the game has all but finished, save for the new cutscenes currently being worked on. Some who've heard the rumor speculate if Retro Studios was reshooting all the cutscenes to be more cinematic, which would certainly align with how recent Nintendo games like Tears of the Kingdom have emphasized cutscene quality more in years prior. If this is the case, we could expect an update whenever Nintendo finally unveils its Switch successor. And the last game on our list is probably the best example of a vaporware game, Capcom's ill-fated action-adventure dungeon crawler, Deep Down. Revealed all the way back in 2013, Deep Down was supposed to be a launch title for the PS4 using an all-new in-house engine called Phanta Ray. The engine would introduce more realistic lighting, better particle effects, more geographical fidelity, and a bunch more features that can make Capcom games look better than ever. Like Project Awakening, the game was developed alongside the new engine. However, the company ran into issues building it out. So Phanta Ray eventually evolved into the RE engine that the recent Monster Hunter and Resident Evil remakes all use. Unfortunately for Deep Down, the complications with Phanta Ray also applied to the game's development, and porting it over to RE was more than likely a costly and time-consuming endeavor. As a result, the game was shelved, and now it lives forever as a what-if scenario for Capcom. There's always a chance that a new version of the game could rise from the ashes of Deep Down. The company is experimenting with several new IPs we mentioned earlier, and they keep extending the trademark for whatever reason. I'm not expecting anything, but if Final Fantasy Versus 13 made it out of development hell, who's to say this or any other game won't? But what games do you remember being announced that never came out? I'm sure we're only scratching the surface, so make sure to let us know in the comments. Maybe we'll try and figure out what happened to these games. Maybe they'll finally get an update. I don't know. We'll see you next time. I'm Kyle.